As a mail-order bride, Evelyn expected to find a family, but instead found herself sold for her father's debts. The cunning banker Emerson, who ruined lives for greed, considered her his property. However, he did not know that in this fragile girl lay a strength capable of exposing his deception. Watch the story to the end to find out how Evelyn and the cowboy Brock restored justice. This story will shock you and teach you wisdom, and at the end you will find an important conclusion. Don't forget to subscribe and like. The Arizona sunset painted the sky in shades of fire and blood as the stagecoach, creaking and groaning, stopped at a rickety saloon. Evelyn, huddled in a corner, felt a shiver run through her body. Not from the cold the evening air was warm, but from fear. Fear of the unknown, of a world as foreign to her as the desert was to a sea breeze. Just a month ago, she was Evelyn Mason, the daughter of a respected Boston tailor. But her father's death and the debts he left behind forced her to accept the only decent offer she had heard of, to marry a cowboy from Gravy Falls, Texas, whom she had never seen. His name was Brock Caldwell. His letters were dry, but polite. He wrote about his farm, about the need for a real mistress, and promised that life would be simple, but honest. Evelyn, looking out the window at the endless, desolate expanses, could not imagine anything but horror. Her graceful hands, accustomed to the delicate work of lace, seemed useless in this harsh land. Her silk dress, her only reminder of her past life, was covered in dust, and she felt like a stranger, like a ghost. When the stagecoach door opened, she was met not by Brock, but by a tall, broad-shouldered man, his face hidden in the shadow of his hat's brim. He was dressed in a dusty leather vest and dark pants. His steps were slow and confident, like a predator's. Evelyn felt her heart sink. This was not the Brock she had imagined from his letters. She had expected to see a good-natured farmer, but standing before her was a man who radiated danger. "Evelyn," his voice was low and hoarse, like the rustling of gravel. "Yes, that's me." Her voice trembled. He nodded, and his gaze slid over her from top to bottom, stopping on her frightened face. "I'm Brock Caldwell." Evelyn felt a pang of disappointment. He was not as old as she had imagined, but his face was grim, with wrinkles from the sun, and his gaze was cold and scrutinizing. There was not a drop of the kindness she had so hoped for. He did not offer her a hand to help her out of the stagecoach. He just stood there and waited. "The wagon is over there," he indicated with his chin to an old, battered wagon. She struggled to get out and followed him. He didn't look at her, as if she were just another thing he needed to transport. This was her first pain. She had dreamed of a gentle,
I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone.
polite attitude, of at least a hint that she meant something to him, but she was met with indifference and coldness. This cruelty wounded her more than any rudeness. When they arrived at his farm, Evelyn saw that he wasn't joking about a simple life. Their house was a small, dilapidated shack, and his lands were dry, cracked fields that hadn't seen a harvest in a long time. It wasn't just modest. It was hopeless. "This is your new life," Brock pointed to the house. But this is Evelyn couldn't find the words. Her ideals, her hopes for an honest life, crumbled into dust. "What? Not what you imagined." He smirked, and that smirk was filled with bitterness. "But you wrote that you had a thriving farm." Tears gushed from her eyes. This was true, pure anger, directed at him, and at the whole situation. She had been deceived. She had been lied to. Brock did not answer. He just looked at her like an annoying animal. Then he bent down, and his low, hoarse voice, the one that had seemed so reliable in the letters, whispered something that would forever change her world. "Your father, old Burns, lost you to me in a card game. This is a deal, not a marriage." The words hit her like the lash of a whip. She stopped breathing. Her tears gushed forth with new force, but they were no longer tears of disappointment, but tears of horror and humiliation. She was not just a mail-order bride. She was merchandise. A simple deal. She fell to her knees, her body convulsing with sobs. Her entire world, already fragile, collapsed in an instant. She was hundreds of miles from home, in a place where there was no one to help her. She was completely at the mercy of this man, and her fate had been decided at a card table. She was sure it couldn't get any worse. She was wrong. When she looked up, she saw Brock turn away and walk to his wagon. In that moment, she felt a pain that pierced her through. Hatred for herself for allowing herself to be so humiliated. Hatred for her father who so easily disposed of her fate. And, of course, hatred for this cowboy who had become the embodiment of her nightmare. She felt broken, lost, and endlessly alone. She was ready to resign herself because she saw no way out. But as soon as Brock returned and extended his hand to help her up, he whispered something that made her freeze. "Your father was a friend of mine. I didn't want this, and I need you, but not in the way you think." This was the last thing she expected to hear. Evelyn looked up, and her tear-filled eyes met his. There was no mockery in them, only fatigue and something that looked like compassion. This feeling was so unexpected that she stopped crying. What do you mean?" Her voice was barely audible. Brock sighed heavily, and his face softened for a moment. "Your father lost everything he had, including the house, and then you. But he was a friend to me. I wouldn't have let you fall into the hands of the man who won the bet." He turned away, looking at the faded boards of his house. "It wasn't a fair game. It was a desperate, stupid act. And I stepped in. I paid his debt so that you wouldn't become someone else's property. And then he just left you in this contract." Brock's words were like a gulp of cold water in a scorching desert. Stunned, Evelyn stood up. The pain from her father's betrayal hadn't gone away, but now it was mixed with something new: intrigue. Why did Brock, harsh and silent, decide to make such a sacrifice? He got nothing in return except the burden that Evelyn represented for him. "So you didn't want this marriage?" she asked. "Never." His answer was dry, like the sand under their feet. "But your father and his letters. He begged me. He knew he didn't have long to live. He wanted me to take care of you. I couldn't refuse." Evelyn felt her world shake again. Her father, whom she considered kind and honest, was a bankrupt gambler. Brock, whom she considered rude and cruel, turned out to be a man of honor who took on someone else's debt. This turn of events was a shock that completely flipped her worldview. In the following days, Evelyn's life turned into a strange existence. Brock treated her with cold courtesy, but didn't touch her or even look her in the eye for longer than necessary. She cooked simple food, cleaned the shack, and learned to chop wood. He, in turn, disappeared into the fields all day, trying to revive the burnt-out land. One night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She went out of the house to get some fresh air and saw Brock. He was sitting by the fire, his head resting on his knees. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. This was the most unexpected sight. The grim cowboy, the embodiment of masculinity and strength, was broken. Evelyn approached him, not daring to speak. He didn't hear her steps. When she carefully touched his shoulder, he flinched and raised his head. In the firelight, his face was smeared with dirt and tears. "Brock, what happened?" she asked. He didn't answer, but her gaze fell on his hands. They were covered in blisters. He was trying to plow the land with his bare hands. In that moment, looking at his tormented face, she felt not pity, but pure, piercing pain. She understood that his life was the same as hers. She was trapped. He worked to the point of exhaustion, trying to bring the dead land back to life, too, as she suddenly realized, save not only himself, but her as well. Evelyn ran her hand over his face, wiping away the dirt. He didn't pull away. "Tell me," she said quietly. He was silent for a long time, and then he began to speak. His voice was hoarse, but now it didn't have the same bitterness as on the day they met. He told her how his father, Bill Caldwell, was killed in his shop many years ago. Brock's family was prosperous until a silver vein was found on their land. And this is where something happened that made her freeze, and her blood turned to ice. Brock said that one of the most influential men in town, the banker Mr. Emerson, used all his resources to take possession of their land. He forged property documents, hired bandits, and killed Brock's father when he refused to give him the land. And then, using his influence, he made it so that Brock was left without land. He was my friend, Evelyn. My father trusted him. But when he found out about the silver, he stopped at nothing. Brock lowered his head. And then he found out about your father. He started playing cards with him, knowing he was a gambling addict. That's when Evelyn understood. My grandmother and grandfather, who love intrigue so much, will understand that this was the turning point. Her father was playing with Emerson, and lost everything. With Emerson, not with Brock. Her anger flared up with new force. But this time it was not directed at Brock. It was directed at Emerson, the cunning, deceitful banker who destroyed two families. Hers and his. Her heart clenched with fury. She was not just merchandise. She was a pawn in someone else's game, and she had to fight. At dawn, Evelyn was the first to get up. Her anger was replaced by determination. For the first time in a long time, she felt not like a victim, but like a participant. She was no longer a helpless bride, she was an ally. She walked over to Brock, who was sleeping, his face buried in the dirt. His hand was still bloody from the torn blisters. She brought a bucket of water and carefully washed his wounds, then treated them. Brock woke up and looked at her in surprise. There wasn't a single word of gratitude in his eyes, just a question. "Why'd?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "We're in the same boat, Brock," she said, tying the bandage on his palm. "I know about Emerson. My father, he was his victim too." Brock got up, his gaze serious. "You'd better go back to town, Evelyn. This isn't your fight. I can't let you out. Leave." "Where?" "To Boston, where debts await me, or to a saloon, where I was gambled away in a card game. No, my life was ruined because of Emerson, just like yours was. I won't leave you, and I have an idea." Evelyn told him about her past, about how her father was the best tailor, how she helped him with embroidery, how she had a keen eye for fabrics. These were the details of her former, fragile life, but she saw a key in this. "He stole everything from you that was related to the land and the silver, but he doesn't know that there's one more person left in town who also knew about your father. My dad told me that his shop had a regular customer, Mrs. McCormick. She was a wealthy woman, but she often ordered clothes from us, because her husband also worked on a farm, and she knew what was happening with the land. She always said that Emerson was cunning and that he was up to something. Maybe she knows more. You don't have to get everything back by force. Well, be smarter. Well, look for the truth." Brock looked at her as if she were crazy, but there was no madness in her eyes, only determination. He saw in her not a helpless mail-order bride, but a strong woman, and for the first time, he felt hope. They began their plan. Evelyn, using her skill, remade an old dress into a more modest and simple one so as not to attract unnecessary attention. They went to town. Brock left Evelyn to wait in the saloon so as not to attract Emerson's attention, and he went to the bank himself. "I'll go to him," he said. "I'll tell him that I'm ready to sell the land and leave, if he gives me money for it. I'll see his reaction." Evelyn spent several hours in the saloon. She felt out of place, among drunk men playing cards and laughing loudly. She sat at a table, trying to be inconspicuous. She didn't want to be recognized, or worse, to have one of the men start bothering her. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice. It was Emerson. He was sitting at a table with several other important people. Evelyn clenched her fists. She watched him laugh. Her heart pounded, and anger coursed through her veins. She saw his self-satisfied face and felt that she wouldn't be able to hold back. She wanted to walk up to him and tell him everything she thought, but she remembered the plan and sat like a statue. Meanwhile, Brock, in Emerson's office, realized his plan was working. The banker met him with a cold smirk. "You've come to ask for money for your worthless land?" Emerson laughed. "You know that by law it belongs to me, so you'll get nothing. And your bride, I hear she's very beautiful. Maybe you'll sell her to me, and I'll give you a little money." "She's not for sale." Brock's voice was calm, but fury bold within it. "You don't understand anything, Bo." Emerson leaned forward, his voice a low hiss. "Her father, Burns, he was my debtor, owed me a very large sum, and to avoid paying, he gave her to me. And then you, Brock, bought her. It was nice of you, but stupid." This part should end with rising tension. For the first time, Brock heard the truth. Not just rumors, but a confession from Emerson himself. He stood, stunned, realizing that Evelyn had been right. He and his father were victims of the same man. Meanwhile, Evelyn, sitting in the saloon, heard someone call her name from behind her. She turned around. Standing in front of her was Mrs. McCormick. Evelyn felt her heart sink into an abyss. She couldn't let Emerson know she was here. And just then, Brock walked into the saloon. He saw Evelyn and Mrs. McCormick, and his eyes widened in horror. For 1,000 characters, Mrs. McCormick, an elderly but energetic woman, looked at Evelyn with genuine interest. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again, child. After finding out your father had died, I tried to find you, but they told me you had gone west." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at Brock, and his eyes screamed, "Leave, right now." But it was too late. Emerson, noticing Mrs. McCormick and Evelyn, got up. His smile was white and sinister. He walked over to them. "Mrs. McCormick, what a pleasant meeting. And it seems you've found our mail-order bride, Miss Mason. You ran away so inconveniently. Brock was looking for you everywhere. Isn't that right, Brock? Brock clenched his fists, but remained silent. Evelyn realized that at this moment she had to make a choice. Either she would surrender, or she would fight. You're mistaken, Mr. Emerson. Evelyn's voice was firm, without a hint of fear. I'm here to reveal the truth. A deathly silence fell over the saloon. All eyes were on them. Emerson, who considered himself the king of this town, was shocked by her audacity. What truth? About your drunkard father. He owed me, and he gave you away to save his own skin. His voice was full of contempt. Evelyn stepped forward. My father owed you, but not for card games. He owed you for the documents you forged to steal Brock's land. He was trying to save his soul, but you, Emerson, lured him into a game so that he would lose his daughter. A whisper ran through the saloon. People looked at Evelyn, then at Emerson. Brock, standing next to them, was ready for any confrontation, but now he just stood and listened. That's a lie, Emerson shouted. I have documents that prove the land is mine. And then Mrs. McCormick handed him an old, yellowed parchment. I found these documents in your late husband's belongings, Evelyn. He said that Emerson forced him to sign fake papers, but my husband hid a copy so that you would have a chance. He hoped that you would marry a good man who would help you with this. Emerson turned pale. His hands trembled when he saw the document. He tried to snatch it, but Brock grabbed his wrist. Emerson cried out in pain as Brock twisted his arm. Now, Mr. Emerson, we have proof, and you will answer for what you have done, Brock said. The tension reached its climax. Fear, anger, and despair were reflected on Emerson's face. He tried to hit Brock, but he dodged and pushed him away. Emerson fell to the floor, and his hat flew off his head. He was defeated, not by fists, but by the truth. The next morning, Emerson, shamed and exposed, was taken out of town. The residents of Grave Falls, having learned how he had deceived many people, did not defend him. Brock and Evelyn stood on the doorstep of their house, watching the sunrise. The land was still dry, but hope was in the air. I don't know what to say, Evelyn. Brock awkwardly scratched the back of his neck. You saved me, and my land, and you saved me. She looked at him, and there were no tears or fear in her eyes, only a calm, warm smile. You turned out to be the good man my father wanted to find, even if he arranged it so stupidly. Brock stepped towards her and gently took her hands. His touch was warm and tender. I didn't ask you for help, but I'm very glad you stayed. You didn't ask, but you didn't push me away either. Sometimes that's where true strength lies, she replied. Brock leaned in, and their lips met in their first, clumsy, but sincere kiss. At that moment, they both understood that they had found not just salvation, but a true reconciliation with the past and hope for the future. Conclusion. With a lesson, this story is about how, in the most difficult times, people can find support in each other. Evelyn, a girl from a big city, and Brock, a surly cowboy, were connected by tragedy. But instead of giving up, they united to fight for justice. The lesson we can take from this story, especially for our older audience, is that life can be unfair, but there is always room for hope. Just as in the 1880s, when deception and cruelty reigned in the Wild West, in the modern world there are also Emersons who try to take what is dear to us through deceit. That there will always be Brocks, people who are ready to come to the rescue, even if it is not in their own interest. Don't give up, seek the truth, and believe in those who are next to you. Even the darkest clouds cannot hide the sun forever.